Today I'm joined by Lindsay Urquhart, the founder of Bespoke Careers, a specialist creative job agency with offices in London, Sydney, Melbourne, New York, Los Angeles and Brisbane. Now, Lindsay, you recruit for architecture and design studios around the world. So has lockdown affected recruitment in the sector, and has it been the same in all regions?
No, it's been quite different. It's affected us all quite dramatically in all offices. I think what we saw was London, Sydney, and Melbourne were about the same time. Jobs in kind of end of March, April, pretty much went on hold across the board. We were surprised that in the States, particularly in Los Angeles, things carried on for a little bit longer. But by about mid-April, we started to see the States affected as well. There's been different government policies in each region, which has really affected kind of, how offices and practices have dealt with it. The furlough, which I'm sure you know about in the UK, has meant that people, if they've not got work for them, they can't work at all. So they're kind of, they're at home, they're prohibited from working. Whereas in Australia, they've got something called the job keeper. And that allows people to continue to work, which I think has been really helpful for practices because they can still get people to, they've been doing competitions and pitching for work, which has really, really helped. And that will run through to the end of September. And then in the States, we've got something called the PPP, which is more like a kind of loan, a grant to the business. And again, that helps cover salaries for people so they can continue to work. And it also contributes to things like rent. So it's been really, really quite different, the kind of help that you get in each region. And I think that, it's had an impact on redundancies and that sort of thing as well.
So what is actually happening in the UK at the moment? Are practices hiring, or are they making people redundant at the moment?
There's the jobs that we had pretty much went on hold across the board at the end of March, and it's been like that, to be honest, until about maybe sort of 2-3 weeks ago. We've started to see things pick up a little bit. We've got very specific requirements for people, say, who are French speakers, or people who've quite a lot of kind of landscape and kind of urban things. We've got some positions in that, but it's tended to be very specific roles rather than the kind of generalist ones. So there's definitely been some redundancies. I think we've probably got more of that to come when we see the furlough scale back in the autumn, but certainly not as much redundancies as we saw in the last recession.
Have you seen any changes in the way that practices are recruiting now, or do you foresee a change ahead? And what about a shift from permanent to fixed term requirements?
We thought from the beginning that we would see kind of the Australian market recover quicker than probably the UK and the States. So it's quite helpful to see what's happening there. They did very well with the virus. They've only had, I think, under 100 people have still lost their lives to the virus. So there things are really picking up much quicker. So we can kind of see what we predict will happen here, happening there. And that's very much a kind of practices are using contract, kind of short-term help to kind of fill gaps. The permanent hires that they are doing, they try and do themselves rather than use an agency generally to start with for cost reasons. But we have really seen a big upturn in the contract side. So, people taking someone on for 3 months to fill a gap without having the kind of commitment to a permanent hire. So I think we'll see more of that. We have had a few roles come in already. On interiors, the people doing interiors work seem to be busier than the kind of base build architecture. Yeah, and I think we'll see more of that in kind of the months ahead.
What other challenges do you see now for practices who are looking to hire and hopefully retain talent?
I think what we're hearing from quite a lot of practices and from some of the architects is that the people that have been working throughout this, and particularly parents with young children trying to homeschool, and they've been working kind of twice as much, much longer hours. It's really difficult when you're at home to kind of say, right, at 6 o'clock, I'm going to stop now. So I think that there's a real danger that the people that have kind of work throughout can be burnt out, and they're kind of exhausted at the time when we're coming back and we need everyone to be kind of up to speed and kind of pushing forward. And I think that there could potentially be a difficulty when you bring the people back from furlough. Those people haven't worked potentially for 3 or 4 months, and that comes with its own challenges. So I think the kind of, obviously the mental health, there's been a lot of talk about that, but I think just burnt out, people exhausted from working, looking after children, cleaning their house, shopping, doing everything, and yeah, I think that could be a real issue kind of between now and potentially the end of the year.
So it's quite tricky for people who are hiring staff while working remotely and getting them on board. What sort of advice do you give to those practices?
We put some guidance together on that, some practical tips, and anything from sort of being really clear from the outset on where they can access things online, making sure that you introduce them on Zoom calls to the whole team, letting the team know in advance that someone's joining, what their background is, maybe setting up some little one-to-ones with people who've been with the practice for a while. We've also set up some guidance for interviewing remotely, because we've become much better at that. Obviously, over the last few months, we've interviewed hundreds of people, and prior to that, we were very much a kind of face-to-face, everyone you go through the portfolio, but actually it's a different set of skills to interviewing someone in person. So, in advance, agree how you're going to go through the portfolio, you're going to label it, what are you going to, how are you going to screen share, how are you going to manage the time online, because that's also, takes a bit of practice. So I think, unlike the last recession where, if you needed someone, you could put an ad in the BD or AJ and, have some people come in and see you. That is very different when you're doing it online.
So finally, what advice do you have for people who are actually looking for work?
I think being flexible in this market is really important. Some people will come and say to us, but, I want to work for X, practice this size in this sector. I think you do need to be flexible, not just with the practice and the kind of projects, but also in terms of the work. So, practices might offer you there might be a contract, it might be a fixed term role, but something that just allows you to get a foot in the door. Our candidate base has been very fortunate for the last, 6-7 years. There's been so much opportunity. People can expect to go, they can go for 6-7 roles and be offered all of them. And, that's not, I don't envisage that's going to be the case for the time to come. So it's about kind of shifting your mentality and being a bit more flexible and understanding that, you'll learn different things, even if it's not exactly what you would have done maybe 6 months ago. So flexibility.
So what sort of sectors are hiring at the moment then?
We've still got a few education roles on the books. They're quite strong. We've got, like I say, very specific roles where someone's got languages and BIM. We've still got some BIM requirements. The practices that we're seeing, and we're seeing this in the States, Australia and here, seem to be high-end residential. So, one-off bespoke houses, kind of, people, I guess, with budgets. Those sort of practices seem to have been less effective than the kind of big commercial offices. So interiors, kind of high-end resi, and we foresee that it will be potentially, the infrastructure, healthcare, education moving forward. But certainly in New York and Sydney, which, we see as being a little bit ahead of London, that's where demand has been the highest.
Yes, well, there's lots of suggestions that Boris Johnson should invest in infrastructure and construction, particularly he's announced there's going to be a programme for schools. So hopefully some of that will work down into architects and design professions. So Lindsay, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your insights.
Thanks, Peter.